Excuse me, everybody. I have the honor of welcoming you to this wonderful occasion. And we're so happy to see so many wonderful people and friends. And we know you're going to enjoy every minute of it. So thank you for being here and for taking the time to come and join us to celebrate the Grolier and Ifeanyi and everything that has to do with poetry.
Hello, my name is Michael McCarthy, and it's been my immeasurable delight to work at the Grolier on Saturdays, to be a part of the team that keeps this institution running, to attend so many readings, to meet so many poets and poetry lovers. And it is an honor and a thrill to be in the company of all of you wonderful people here tonight, and thrilling also to be in the presence of such luminous artists, verse makers, musicians. I'm sure it's going to be an amazing night. Surely many of you are familiar with the work of the poets who will be reading, Regie Gibson and Charles Coe. And for those of you who are coming to their poetry for the first time, I won't spoil the surprise. To begin, I'd like to ask everyone to please silence your cell phones. We would love to hear the singing of Ifeanyi Menkiti, poetry of Ifeanyi Menkiti, of Charles Coe, Regie Gibson. We don't want to hear your Nokia ringtone. So please, to everyone, without exception, and feel free to monitor the people around you, make sure that they're doing it, make sure that you're silencing your cell phones. Thank you very much for that. So my goal in providing the introduction for tonight is to be almost invisible, because I have the at once enviable and pitiful task of introducing artists who really need no introduction, but here goes anyway. We're going to start with the singer Ogechi Okoye. Ogechi Okoye is a Nigerian soprano currently studying voice and opera at the New England Conservatory under the mentorship of Professor Jane Eagland. Originally from Eastern Nigeria, she was raised in Lagos, where her musical journey began in the church choir. How fitting. That early love for music led her to train at the MTN Foundation Muson Diploma School of Music. She is passionate about sharing both classical repertoire and African music, and has had the privilege of performing in spaces like Jordan Hall and with organizations such as Castle of Our Skins. Through her music, she aims to tell meaningful stories and celebrate cultural heritage. The song she will be singing this evening is Magbagbemi by S.K. Oratimehin. Magbagbemi means don't forget me. Please welcome Ogechi Okoye.
Good time, everyone. I need to set something. Everyone. So this song that I'll be singing today, it's gonna be a song for comfort, a song to make you, whatever you're feeling, whoever you're missing, it's just going to remind you of how you've loved them, of how the comfort you've experienced with them. And I hope that as you listen to this song, you'll feel their presence no matter where they are.
Thank you. Thank you, Regie.
We can hear him,
Our next
the,
artist
hear the singer.
proves that in the Menkiti family, poetry is the family business. Carter Menkiti is a 13-year-old poet who lives in Washington, D.C. He participated in the Day 8 Poetry Day camp last year and had 2 of his poems published in their anthology. He will be sharing 2 poems with us. What Art Means to Me, dedicated to his grandfather, Ifeanyi Menkiti, and the poem Wishful Thinking. Please welcome Carter Menkiti.
Good evening. My name is Carter Menkiti. I'm 13 years old, a youth poet, and tonight, most importantly, I'm Ifeanyi Menkiti's grandson. I'm going to share with you two poems tonight. The first I've written recently. The second one I wrote as a part of the poetry program last summer that I've dedicated towards my grandfather. Let's start with the first one. Wishful thinking. I wish a lot. I wish for the equal rights and equal opportunities among all people. It's not fair to need to dream, to wish for all of us to be treated as equals. But maybe we need to think equal doesn't mean fitting in with some conformity, some societal norm. Because what makes the human species so unique, so special, so beautiful is our power to defy, to rebel. We rebel when stuff isn't right. And most of the time, most of it can be pretty beautiful, pretty beautiful. Our right to rebel, to defy against stuff not being fair, to stuff not being fair, to disagree keeps us true to ourselves. Maybe the imbalance lets us be creative with speeches, with what ifs, with following our hopes and dreams, following them like the deer follows the headlights on an open freeway. It's hard to compromise when we all see things differently, when we all handle life differently. But that's really beautiful, to me at least, that nobody can see life one shared way. Maybe some things cannot be equal, not because they're fair, not because they're good, but because if it matters, us as humans have the power to fight for change, even if it's just wishful thinking. But it may not just be wishful thinking. It's showing a right to fight, a right that one day it's not just wishful thinking, not even wishful thinking, but the type of thinking that made wishes come true, can be harnessed but also roam free. For the human mind is a truly beautiful being that can never be forgotten. Now, this is the one I've dedicated towards my grandfather. What art means to me. It's a beautiful, ugly, a process with steps, the multiple tones, black, white, gray, writing, music, painting. The love into making, oh, so pitiful. The hate may make you feel, oh, so miserable. But art has spirit, and the spirit had art. For art is gorgeous with a flavor of tart.
So now we reach the point in the evening where we get to what I believe I can call the main course. Charles Coe is a Boston-based poet. His poetry collections include All Sins Forgiven, Poems for My Parents, Picnic at the Moon, Purgatory Road, Memento Mori, and Charles Coe, New and Selected. Certain of his works are available at the front. Be sure to grab one while supplies last. After serving on the Massachusetts Cultural Council, he served as an artist in residence for the city of Boston, creating an oral history of the people who live and work in Mission Hill. He teaches poetry and prose at grade schools, high schools, writing conferences and workshops, an adjunct professor at Salve Regina University and Bay Path University. He teaches poetry and nonfiction in each of their MFA programs. He's also a vocalist and musician, specializing in the didgeridoo. He has explored funk, gospel, and the blues with such groups as the Convergence Ensemble and the Revolutionary Snake Ensemble, with whom he recited his poem, Symphony of Crickets. Please join me in welcoming Charles Coe.
Michael, thank you so much. And what a gathering of the tribes here. It's fabulous. So many shining familiar faces. So Michael, thank you. Thanks to the Grolier Poetry Bookstore owners, Carol and Ndidi. Thanks to James Fraser. James, where you at? Where you at? There he is over there. He's one of the hardest working men in the poetry business. Ogechi, where you at? That was beautiful. Can we have another hand for her? And Carter. The torch has been passed. So keep on doing what you're doing. I am just so honored to be a part of this event to celebrate the life of a true Renaissance man. Ifeanyi was a poet, a scholar, a philosopher, passionate social activist, a great family man, a teacher who influenced the life and work of countless students. Anyone here ever studied poetry with Ifeanyi? Nobody here? Well, I know there's a whole lot of people who did. And he's the person who stepped forward to take the helm of the oldest continuously operating bookstore in the country that's dedicated to poetry. So this is all wonderful stuff, and thanks to you all for keeping the tradition alive. So I'm going to start with a poem called Prelude. Before we begin, may I ask you a question? Would it bother you if at some point I forgot to remember the illusion that we are made of solid matter? That we instead consist of atoms and electrical charges or 99% empty space? Would it bother you to look through my suddenly spectral form and see the backrest of my chair? It wouldn't be intentional, a parlor trick. It's just that when I think about broken children lying in the rubble of bombed out buildings, I sometimes find it difficult to remain tied to this world. So if I seem to fade, please don't judge or be alarmed. Just hold out your hand. We can touch palm to palm to keep ourselves connected to this terrible and beautiful place. Remind us we are made of the same stuff as the stars. Ifeanyi was obviously a man of two worlds, his African birthplace and his adopted home, the United States of America. Here are two poems of mine that speak of Africa. This is performance art. Three African men are standing by their cabs in front of the supermarket, talking and waiting for passengers. There was freezing rain yesterday, and one of the men is scraping what's left of the ice from his windshield, but he's not actually scraping, rather he's just tapping at the ice with a lack of enthusiasm so vast, it's mesmerizing. So I stopped to watch. It could easily be performance art, maybe titled Man for Whom New England Winter Has Lost Its Charm. In this piece, he leans over the windshield, tapping, 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 inside a circle of red velvet ropes hanging from brass poles. His admirers, more numerous by the moment, stand respectfully outside the circle watching, while black-suited gentlemen in mirrored shades and earbuds discreetly circumnavigate the crowd, maintaining order. The audience, and that every movement speculating to each other in whispers. What's the meaning? The message? Perhaps it's a symbolic statement on the utility of man's eternal struggles with the forces of nature. There's a gasp of surprise and delight when his indifferent tapping actually dislodges a chunk of ice the size of a thumbnail. But our artist never looks up, never acknowledges his enraptured audience. His eyes are focused not on ice and snow, but on something only he can see, perhaps a row of coconut trees near the ocean's edge, fronds waving in the warm breeze, and far out to sea, almost at the horizon, a fleet of village fishermen slowly rowing home under a cloudless sky. And this is for the Africans on slave ships who committed suicide by jumping overboard. You had to plan carefully. Wait for the moment when a deckhand or first mate's attention was elsewhere before climbing quickly onto the railing to dive into the dark waters. Sometimes a few of you joined hands, gazed into each other's eyes a moment before leaping. After suicides, ship's officers would mourn. Each death reduced the journey's profit. Some of you believed you would rise from the sea. Find yourselves at home in your villages once again, walking down the hills where you played as children, toward the smell of roasting yams and the sound of crowing roosters, loved ones celebrating your return as the morning sun licked salt water from your ebony skin. The Bonnie built a wonderful life in this country, but I wonder how he would have fared in America of today, where there are so many people who would love nothing more than to sandblast those words of welcome from the base of the Statue of Liberty. The person who wrote those welcoming words, Emma Lazarus, was a fifth generation Jewish American poet and social and political activist who defended persecuted Jews and began to work for the relief of immigrants of all backgrounds. So we're all familiar with those words on this statue, but let's visit the entire sonnet. This is The New Colossus by Emma Lazarus. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied tongue, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shores. Send these, the homeless tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. This work that we must continue to speak and think and defend. Because in these last years, many of the people seeking refuge in this country haven't sailed or steamed across the Atlantic as in the past. They've flown here. They've made their slow, often torturous way north from South and Central America. And it's a sad and bitter irony that so many of the people this government is rejecting or deporting or brutalizing or fleeing countries that have been destabilized by this country's foreign policy. I wrote the following poem to consider the plight of some of these refugees from the South. This is Night Birds. A young woman lies in the moonlight along the banks of a river whose name she does not know. Head resting on a coat balled into a pillow. Sleepless ears taking in the sounds around her, sighs and snores and quiet conversations. An old man's tired, dry cough, blending with the baby's cry. Night birds, whose calls remind her of the home she left behind. She lies in the dark, remembering a place she knows she will never see again, the village where she laughed and played as a child, where now men with automatic rifles swarm the streets like stone-faced farmers who sow only blood and tears. Her body aches from a day riding atop a northbound freight train, El Tren de la Muerte, the death train, where those who lose their grip can tumble to earth, often to their death, while the train, like some blind, mindless animal, rumbles on. But in spite of everything she's seen, she still believes in the power of prayer. So she prays to remain invisible to the men from the drug cartels who sell those they kidnap into forced labor, prostitution. She prays for a home with a warm bed. She prays that there is goodness still to be found in this world, that those she meets at the end of this long journey will be generous and kind. And in the moment before sleep comes at last, the night birds at the river's edge add their songs to her prayer. Salman Rushdie, writer known for his courage, obviously, in speaking truth to power, has said, a poem cannot stop a bullet, a novel cannot defuse a bomb, but we can sing the truth and name the liars. Ifeanyi was a poet who sang the truth and named the liars. And many of us here in this collection of robbers, liars, and thieves, AKA poets, of course, you all. We're trying to do the same thing. Speak truth to power and name the liars. This is a poem called Because. Because the manufacture and sale of bombs is an extremely profitable business. Because those who profit from the production of bombs will never experience their effects. Because at the end of the day, people who make bombs go home and hug their children. Because bombs are designed to take things apart, not put things together. Because bombs are deployed without risk to those who deploy them. Because bombs whisper collateral damage as they embrace their targets. Because the light of an exploding bomb is brighter than the sun. Because the words of politicians are written on the bombs in blood. Because at the moment of detonation, the fulfillment of their destiny. We cannot know whether bombs feel satisfaction or sorrow. Because the dogs that search for broken bodies buried beneath the rubble later dream strange and restless dreams. No, Ruby Bridges, I'm older than Ruby Bridges. Her moment of light, ancient history. None of this is ancient history. And it's not even history at all. It's coming back on us. It's coming right back. This is for Ruby. This is for Ruby Bridges. In the Norman Rockwell painting, Ruby Bridges, the problem we all live with. You are being escorted into the segregated school by federal marshals. We see 4 of them in the frame, 2 walking ahead, 2 behind, but we don't see their faces. You are the focus of the piece. A thrown tomato is smashed on the wall behind you. You walk straight ahead, past the red guts dripping down and piled on the sidewalk, past the faint ghost of nigger painted on the wall someone tried with limited success to scrub away. Ruby, what can we possibly say about you? What words can describe this 6-year-old child armed with only a notebook and ruler, walking resolutely past that pack of jabbering hyenas, past the woman who every day threatened to poison you, past the woman who every day waved before your face a black doll in a coffin? The lead marshal said, "You never cried once in public during that nightmare year." What can we possibly say about you? Brave as any astronaut climbing into a tin can to be launched into the airless void. Haiku for George Floyd. That final moment when you called out for mama, did birds go silent? We lost so many of our great poets are now singing and writing prose from the other side. And one of my favorites was Nikki Giovanni, who we lost last year, late last year. And this is, I'm gonna read one of my favorites of hers, and it's hard to pick a favorite Nikki Giovanni poem. This is Rosa Parks. This is for the Pullman porters who organized when people said they couldn't, and carried the Pittsburgh Courier and the Chicago Defender to the Black Americans in the South, so they would know they were not alone. This is for the Pullman porters who helped Thurgood Marshall go south and come back north to fight the fight that resulted in Brown versus the Board of Education. Because even though Kansas is west, and even though Topeka is the birthplace of Gwendolyn Brooks, who wrote the powerful The Chicago Defender Sends a Man to Little Rock, it was the Pullman porters who whispered to the traveling men, both the blues men and the race men, so they both would know what was going on. This is for the Pullman porters who smiled as if they were happy and laughed like they were tickled when some folks were around, and who silently rejoiced in 1954 when the Supreme Court announced its 9-0 decision that separate is inherently unequal. This is for the Pullman porters who smiled and welcomed a 14-year-old boy onto their train in 1955. They noticed a slight limp that he tried to disguise with a doo-wop walk. They noticed his stutter and probably understood why his mother wanted him out of Chicago during the summer when school was out. 14-year-old Black boys with limps and stutters are apt to try to prove themselves in dangerous ways when mothers aren't around to look after them. So this is for the Pullman porters who looked over that 14-year-old while the train rolled the reverse of the blue highway from Chicago to St. Louis to Memphis to Mississippi. This is for the men who kept him safe. And if Emmett Till had been able to stay on a train all summer, he would have maybe grown a bit of a paunch, certainly lost his hair, probably have worn bifocals, and bounced his grandchildren on his knee, telling them about his summer riding the rails, but he had to get off the train and ended up in muddy Mississippi and was horribly, brutally, inexcusably, and unacceptably murdered. This is for the Pullman porters who, when the sheriff was trying to get the body secretly buried, got Emmett's body on the northbound train, got his body home to Chicago, where his mother said, "I want the world to see what they did to my boy." And this is for all the mothers who cried. And this is for all the people who said, "Never again." And this is about Rosa Parks, whose feet were not so tired. It had been, after all, an ordinary day until the bus driver gave her the opportunity to make history. This is about Mrs. Rosa Parks from Tuskegee, Alabama, who was also the field secretary of the NAACP. This is about the moment Rosa Parks shouldered her cross, put her worldly goods aside, was willing to sacrifice her life so that that young man in Money, Mississippi, who had been so well protected by the Pullman porters, would not have died in vain. When Mrs. Parks said no, a passionate movement was begun. No longer would there be a reliance on the law. There was a higher law. When Mrs. Parks brought that light of hers to expose the evils of the system, the sun came down and rested on her shoulders, bringing the heat and the light of truth. Others would follow Mrs. Parks. Poor young men in Greensboro, North Carolina would also say no. Great voices would be raised, singing the praises of God and exhorting us to forgive those who trespass against us. But it was the Pullman porters who safely got Emmett to his granduncle. And it was Mrs. Rosa Parks who could not stand that death. And in not being able to stand it, she sat back down. There are those who think, slavery wasn't such a bad idea. The man who would be king is trying to scrub the exhibitions at the Smithsonian Institute because they think, the slavery thing is a downer. We should talk about the good things about America. This is just another day for Juneteenth. On the first day of the new year, 1863, on a Texas plantation, a man opens his eyes as sunlight streams through the windows of his little shack. The windows aren't really windows, just holes in the walls covered with tar paper for when the cold wind blows. This man rises from his rough bed of hay, splashes water on his face, and eats a breakfast of cold fatback and cornbread. It's wintertime. Too early to harvest sugarcane, work the press that rolls stalks flat to extract the juice, the press that longs to crush careless fingers. It's too early to stir the giant iron pots that splash boiling cane juice on your skin. It's too early to do that. It's too early to plant or pick or haul or bale cotton. Those hot and thankless days will come soon enough. Today's a day to build stalls in the master's stable. When this man steps out of his shack into the morning light, his woman's already gone, up at the big house, nursing the mistress's baby. And after that, we'll churn butter. And after that, we'll sit with needle and thread to mend a rip in the master's shirt. And after that, we'll kill and pluck and gut a chicken. And after that, we'll haul in wood and stoke the stove. And after that, we'll weed the garden. And after that, we'll go outside to stir a cauldron of lye soap. And once after that, we'll nurse the baby again while her mistress sits on the porch in the shade, sipping cold tea and reciting passages from her Bible. On this first day of the new year, 2,000 miles to the north and east, a tall bearded white man sits at a desk, pauses a moment as if awaiting guidance, dips his pen in ink and writes the words. All persons held as slaves within the rebellious states are and henceforth shall be free. As his pen scratches slowly across the page, 2,000 miles to the south and west, a man and a woman toil beneath the Texas sun. For them, it's just another day. More than 2 years later, Another bearded white man will sit astride his horse in Galveston, Texas, and read General Orders Number 3. The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. Maybe the man and woman who built stalls in the stable and nursed their master's baby on the day Abraham Lincoln wrote the Emancipation Proclamation are still alive when those words spread like wildfire through the state of Texas, or maybe they're not. However you pray, whether you put your hands together to speak holy words, lower your head for a moment of silence, or simply lift a glass, take a moment to remember those enslaved women and men who lived out their lives, never knowing they were now free. No longer chattel, never knowing they were no longer merely beasts of burden, subject to the whims and whips of overseers. Well, I'm going to share two more poems, and then I'm going to yield to my very good friend and poetic partner in crime, Mr. Regie Gibson, who's getting ready to knock y'all alive. And I'm going to share this poem by Ifeanyi that has become something of a tradition at some of the memorials. I understand this is when this is done. And the young become old, and the old become elders, and the elders become spirits. What can be said of them? That those who have traveled to a far country, the far country returns them, but only after they're done. To journey, therefore, from the place on to the Great Pyramid of Saqqara, riding the late express to Brooklyn. The philosopher, how he ends up where he began, and the poet, something he thought might yet bring back that hour's splendor in the grassy field that neither Wordsworth nor Okigbo saw the need to reveal. The secret of this mystery. 2. And that our God not fail us, a prayer said at morning light, but also at evening time. A rose claims a name for itself. The rose did not belong to Umberto alone. We who were not invited to the feast, yet filled it there. And then, and thanking you again and for your kind attention. I'll close with this poem that I wrote some years ago. My first book came out in '99. It was a response to people who say everything's all messed up. There's no point in trying. We're doomed, we're dead. Might as well just stick a fork in this, we're dying. This is if what you say is so. If what you say is so that this world's heart is cracked and crumbling, well, I should get ready for this coming round of gray days. I will stand before cracked mirrors, practicing dyspeptic scowls to flash at babies when their mothers' backs are turned. When children play outside my window, I will shout down curses like those dry old men who hate life because it reminds them of death. Will you then be satisfied when my eyes are covered with that thin, tough film that lets light neither in nor out? We can sit together then in a cozy little room and wiggle our toes before the fire and laugh at the fools who still believe that a life can be saved by one hand reaching for another. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles, for welcoming us into your poetic world. Truly a gift. Regie Gibson is a poet, songwriter, workshop facilitator, and educator. He has worked with such luminaries as Gwendolyn Brooks, Mark Strand, John Legend, Mos Def, and Kurt Vonnegut. He is the author of Storms Beneath the Skin, and he is currently on the faculty of both Clark University and the Berklee College of Music. He has performed and taught at innumerable schools, universities, and theaters, but on a personal note, among the myriad venues in which he has performed, foremost among them in my mind was my high school, where I, the budding poet, came to know what poetry looked, sounded, and felt like beyond the pages of a dusty, musty textbook. Please join me in welcoming Regie Gibson.
Evening, everybody. It is interesting to still be alive. And to hopefully stay that way. Our Chinese brothers and sisters tell us they have a saying, maybe you live in interesting times. I say, maybe we outlive interesting times. Make sure this is said right, because I know you, I got preachers mouth. Yes. To read the last part, something from Mr. Menkiti. Yes, I have heard song, the power of which was not of the world, though the singer of it was in the world. And then, how else to encapsulate what poetry is, right? Speaking to that voice that we hear, but we try to bring it into words, and sometimes it's so ineffable that we can't say what it is, we have to say what it's like, right? Find a way to tell that truth and tell it slant, right? As one of our ancestors gave us. The place I come from, where I think I first discovered poetry, is Mississippi. My great-grandfather, who I knew, he was a railway worker. And he didn't know he was doing poetry. He had a song that he would sing. I am working now, all day long, Lord. Here comes the sun, traveling tracks of sky. Oh, Lord. Now he was to sing on the railroad. What we didn't know is that he was illiterate, could not read, could not write. So he used to make up poems, these little vehicles of meaning, so that he had a mnemonic device so that he could remember important things. In the front of the house, when he was singing that one morning, actually, he was making breakfast for me and my brother. My great-grandmother, who was in the front of the house, shucking peas or corn or something like that. This was a very religious woman who, for her, Jesus and the good Lord were punctuation. How you doing? I'm doing however God want me to do this, how I'm doing. What we having for dinner? Whatever Jesus put in the pot. You know? Tell her what time it is, ask her, she's like, it's Christ 30. And she was in the front of the house, singing one of her love songs to her understanding of the transcendent. And it was, I want Jesus to walk with me. I want Jesus to walk with me. All along life's pilgrim journey, I want Jesus to walk with me. And at one point, me and my brother, I was 7 years old, he was 6, and we had heard those songs before. But this particular time, when my great-granddad was making breakfast, and my great grandmother was in the front, those two songs found each other. And they mingled. And we turned to each other. Very thin house, we could hear everything. And we turned to one another. And I don't have a name for what that is. I like to think maybe it's what our Spanish brothers and sisters might call the duende, the thing that grabs you and won't let you go and brings you so close to death that you finally understand life. But those songs mixed. And I can't do it justice, but it was something like, I want Jesus to walk with me all along traveling tracks of sky. Now, my great-grandfather was a devout atheist. He believed in hard work and prayer wasn't his thing. But what I heard in that tug and that pull between their songs was this meeting of the sacred and the profane, the sacred and the secular, right? And what it means to try to walk that line between our highest transcendent selves and our lower animalistic nature. And I think we don't get that resolved. Therefore, poetry. Ifeanyi was a large human being, person who walked through this world leaving things better than how we found them. If you read his treatments on the person as a communal being and not strictly a Western individual being, you'll understand why he was better, I believe, why he was this way. The understanding that to grow into what it means to be a person is not just because you were born and you're drawing breath, yes, but the understanding that you must try to move through this world as a healing agent rather than a disease, right? What does it take to be a person of moral imagination so that people feel more humane, more uplifted when they're in your presence? That just doesn't happen as a practice. And such men must be honored. That's why I'm thankful for everybody who's put this on today and for being here. Years ago, a friend of mine named Kent Foreman, who was the father who got me. My father loved me, but this was a man who got me. I had an opportunity to write a piece for something that was ekphrastic. It was about bringing together poetry and art. And I began to dive into the works of the Maori. There's a ritual that they have of praying to their idea of the transcendent, to have that part open the way for the individual who's about to be received. Mora is the land of the living where we occupy this house of the living. Boru is the house of those who have transcended this world. And there's this wonderful way that they have of speaking between two worlds. Once I wrote this for Kent, I began to add other names to it. The next was Jack McCarthy. Then it was X.J. Kennedy. Then it was Sam Greenlee. Then it was Everett Hoagland. And now to Mr. Menkiti. Two-way ritual for a chieftain. Mora to borrow. Ancestors, may he arrive safely there. May he who grows strong on our flesh not devour his body. May his soul be greeted by the great woman of night. May she be as ritual smoke rising from the white fire of his head. When her hands, the color of sunset, reach toward his eyes, may she give him spirit sight. When she follows the huia feather to the boar bone carved calligraphy of his face, let her eat its ink and know his naming. Let her bid him pass from Mora, the living place, into Boro, land of darkness that births the light. Boro to Mora. We have heard you. We have heard you. We are pleased with your tears. He is with us. He is with us. The women with fronds in their hands have waved his path open. Their blue-lipped songs have companioned him. Let him greet them. Let them greet him when you uncouple his bones from the dirt, when you clean and paint them, when you resurrect his body in the house of carved faces. And like the poru plant, let him be a yellow annunciation. Let him be a new green, spiraling and weaving us as one. I'd like to read something for Mr. Menkiti's grandson and young folks, something I wish I had been read when I was younger. This is a take on Shakespeare's As You Like It, the speech from Jacques of, all the world is a stage. And this is all your life's a stage. Some advice I wish I had gotten. All your life is a stage. And you sisters and brothers in betweens and others have your exits and your entrances, your various performances, and in fits and starts will play many parts first. You come onto the scene, writhing and screaming, nearly blind and dumb, drooling through toothless gums, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms. This time is now lost to you. And you cannot recall any of it at all. You were innocent and ignorant of screed and scroll and scripture. But before you know it, you get hit with a torrent of facts and figures, indoctrinated by these bigger critters who give you the rules of both school and home, who tell you on which side of what line it is you belong. And so you begin dividing the world into thems and theys and thatses and thises and hims and hers and misses and misses and misters. And you, just when you think you got it down pat, you discover the thunderous bliss of kisses. And that just messes up everything. But how can so small and seemingly meaningless a thing bring you to a place where you find you are displaced of gravity, floating, eyes closed, bearingless, caringless in the blessed yes of it? And while you are gloriously lost and still reeling in the wake of that feeling, some well-meaning killjoy asks you, "So, kid, what are you going to do with your life? What will you do for work? How will you earn? Will you learn a trade, kid? Will you matriculate into college? Will you choose one or none of both of those options? Come on, kid. The bus is leaving, kid. Got to make some decisions, kid. If you don't want to be lost or left behind, you better be quick. You better hop on like we did." And so you make your choice. And we give you a small part of the world to carry along with some instructions. Hurry up, hurry up. Don't slow down, don't mess around, don't dilly, don't dally, don't dawdle, don't bobble, don't wobble, don't tarry. And after decades of doing so, sometimes you find that in between those heaving breaths and lifted loads, you've carried down all those well-worn roads, a knowing finds you. And you begin to find that sometimes through older, slightly blurred eyes, you have achieved a sharper vision. The beginning or evolution of some species of wisdom revealing a lost truth that you sense now in your youth, but by then you will know without doubt. If there were and are only a few things really worth giving 1/10 of an inch of a damn about. A sense of being found and flowered open by love. A hand reaching for yours when the hydra-headed darkness makes you tremble and sway. A long-needed, much too short cry and laugh with those who've walked with you along the way. And just a little more poetry and the blessed thought of doing it again for one more day. Just one more day.
Oh.
Dear heart, even though you are so stupidly dull, even though you are the only muscle with a voice and you keep saying the same shit over and over and over, even though you are like my father, who only worked one job his entire life and thought he had the right to tell me how to live, even though, just like him, your track record in the advice-giving department ain't been so great, I love you as war loves weeping. I loathe you as glass loathes shatter. I love and loathe how you falter at the never-ending arithmetic of bullets and children. For this haunting hurt you have for Trojan women sold into an ancient slavery. For your disbelief of the unreturned compassion Saladin gave his Christian captives. For Jews forced into conversion and name change. For Palestinian bellies empty of bread. Why do you sigh for the unmoved dust gathering on the unopened books of poems? For every word not said by people who are always sad. People songless and silent as pianos with missing teeth. Why are you so easily broken open by broken mothers who've been broken closed? Don't you know, lonely one, no one wants to hear you at night, sobbing yourself bloodless like some soldier that cannot cry himself clean. Dear, too easily wounded heart, if you continue to crack for each injustice you are powerless to stop, for every mythic hero you cannot and could never be, for every history of everything you cannot fix, comfort, or soothe, what will become of you? You, my stupid, beautiful you. It was one I was thinking about reading when I was really pondering what Mr. Menkiti was, how he moved through the world. I've had a few conversations with him, and again, one of those people who every time just to see the sheer presence of who he was, unassuming, right, and humane above all, and I respect that so much. Some years ago, there was a lot of violence going on between people who look like me and our siblings in the Asian American community. And there was a lot of Stop Asian Hate stuff which was going on around that time. At that time, I had the chance to work with a pipa player. A pipa is a lute instrument from China by way of Persia during the time of the Silk Road. And her name is Wu Ma, and she's from Hangzhou, and her style of pipa playing is called Pudong style. And so we talked, and we were doing something just as part of something, and I started talking about the blues. And when I talked about the blues, she began to create a piece in her way of doing her work that was reminiscent of the blues. And she sent that back to me, and we began to have this exchange of Chinese music coming together with the blues, right? So we wrote a few pieces, but one of the things I was able to do was to dive into the history of Chinese poetry. And probably all know of Li Bai and Bai Zhu Yi, who were two famous poets, and they were around the river, the Yangtze, and they both wrote poems about the Weepaw and about a woman who played it. So for me, bringing those two poets together, along with something that comes out of my culture from Mississippi, was where this poem came from. From the Yangtze to the Mississippi Delta, the across water call of a, let me see if I can read it over here. You know, the older I get, the smaller they're making the print. The across water call of a string-born song. Levi, as you wandered in exile, did you hear the across water call of the peepaw being played by the slender fingers of a young girl on the other side of the Yangtze? Was each of her precisely plucked strings a singing mountain? Was each of her fingers slide and trill the sound of wind spilling down from the hills? Did you stop wandering for just a moment to live inside the shimmer of those four strings? Perhaps pour yourself cup after cup of rice wine until you were nightfall drunk. I imagine Levi, a poet smiling, twirling, laugh dancing among the fallen blossoms of dove trees, your shameless shadow offering sips to the sober moon. Decades later, another exiled poet, Bai Juyi, would meet that same girl, now a woman on the same river. She too, an exile from a former life. Her fingers are now sorrow-wise on the peepa's strings as it sits like a tear in her lap. Bai Juyi offers wine. She plays the peepaw, and in her music, the two of you connect across time. Her music is the splatter of rain. It is the clatter of jumbled notes, each falling like a pearl on a platter of jade. Perhaps, upon hearing her, the both of you imagine the many women you've loved. Perhaps each of you imagines himself to be an emperor forgetting a kingdom, longing to get lost in a woman's hair as black as the insides of wine-shut eyelids. I wonder if in that moment, the both of you knew how a millennia from your now, the faint camphor smoke of that song would be carried to a faraway land and river. How it would conjure scenes like those you've seen along the Yangtze, scenes of ancient grandfathers sweating and toiling beneath straw hats, their bent backs aching and arching over crops, their sun-darkened arms now made muscle fire from years of planting and chopping and clearing mile after mile of sugarcane and cotton. And that, like the two of you, when night finds them, they too will sit down next to a moving body of slow water, offer libations beneath that same moon, as in the distance, a string-born song quivers in the flower-censored dark, quivers like a woman's black hair. This is one that I wonder if Mr. Menkiti ever spoke to you about from himself, his perspective, about what it means to be a Black father. And my wife, who is unblack, could not really understand my Mississippi, Chicago ways. She was raised rather liberally. I was not. When I say you do something, you do it. This is not a negotiation. We've had to understand each other. And I've had to realize that I love this woman, but she doesn't really realize what it means to be me. What it means to have to move through this world looking like this and love your children in ways that they don't understand. I had to go through 3 gang territories to get a high school education. My wife had to walk 3 blocks. I grew up in the hardcore ghetto streets of Chicago. Now I live in the hardcore ghetto streets of Lexington, Massachusetts. It's a very different place. So this is a piece I wrote to her. And she said I should tell it to you. Black fathers. To be a Black father is to fear you will outlive your children. It is to fear your sons will be mistaken for guns. It is to want to cut the hood off their hoodies and rip the do-rags from their skulls. Black fathers know their daughters, no matter how formidable their intellects, still need to feel beautiful and loved in a world that hates their skin. A world that tells them to keep their thick lips tucked in. Black fathers are too aware of how history haunts this country, that it is a specter so terrifying to look at that most whites won't. So he watches them run from it, hide inside a frail patriotic nostalgia and a fragile misremembrance of the selves they never were. Watch the Black father at traffic stops. Know that he feels the overseer's whip lashing behind the police officer's eyes and can read the word nigger scratched in the back of his brain. See the Black father tell his children to make their hands visible as he keeps the cop as he keeps looking at the cop's gun-petting hand, stroke the handle as if it is a dog, frothing at the mouth, straining in anticipation of being unleashed on the threat the Black father's advanced degree in educated diction cannot keep him from having become. Listen. Listen to how carefully the Black father announces his intentions, how measured his voice as he over-enunciates every action that will cause his hands to leave the steering wheel. Look at how his white and Asian friends' eyes dart nervously at each other when he tells them about this over rye Manhattan cocktails and well-crafted IPAs. No. That it is at times like this, the Black father seeks the solace of Black music, wants to crawl inside some sound that understands him like a grandmother's all-knowing bosom. So the Black father gives jazz to his children, exhausts himself telling them how it is a metaphor for how they must live, how they must improvise on the tune they were given, and how when they dance, their Black feet must never miss a beat, for there are those trying to trip them up and then blame them for their own falling. Watch closely as the Black father guides his children through the alto ache of the gospel singer's voice, stitches for them the story of how it was birthed from manacle and rape, from Jesus and auction block, tells them how he still loves and treasures that broken beatitude, even though it bends toward a heaven he no longer believes in and praises a God of chains he now devoutly doubts. Black fathers watch out for which well-meaning middle-class white feminist values will get in the way of raising Black sons. Watch out for which ones tell them that they are what's wrong with this world because everything's wrong inside their woolly heads. Black fathers watch white mothers raise white sons to grind Black bones to make white bread. Black fathers are always anxious about being wrongly incarcerated. Absent, dead. To be a Black father is to live like two bruised fists. Have it be given, you do not exist, to always be looked over, to be careful how much you insist. It is to never worry about being overestimated or of getting too much rest at all because, well, you learn to sleep with one eye open when history's got your back against the wall. I'd like to read two more, just one I'd like to read from the professor. I like this one, it's called Silly Old Professor. I guess it's because one day I hope to be. Silly Old Professor. That a child with a very old face is not an old child, but a child whose face is old. Which is not to say that we mean to split, but since a hair without split ends is not a hair, not to be distinguished from hair with splits on it, nor are the splits in the hairs which have split ends, splits which our toenails would recognize. I must submit, dear reader, that there is a job for analysis to do on this matter. And if you say to Mr. Menkiti, is your silliness ever going to end? Mr. Menkiti, he will make reply, maybe tomorrow. Maybe the tomorrow at the end of all tomorrows, which is a tomorrow that will never come. A friend of mine who you won't get to meet, I spoke with him earlier, Mr. Kent Foreman, that connects with this piece, especially the end of it. Look, right now, y'all, everything is happening. Melodrama in Super Cinerama. Right now, somewhere, some child is just falling from some tree. Some philandering husband has misplaced his key to the house, dreads the dreaded anger of his much dreaded spouse. It's 4 a.m. and I want to know where the hell you've been, and I want to know right now. Right now, somewhere in some clothesline tenement yard, some junkie needs a fence. While prostitutes bemoan the scarcity of tricks, hey, times are hard somewhere right now. 'Cause love, somebody's got the blues. Lives in a world of deeper, darker hues than grottos tunneled into the bottoms of Italian aisles. And baby, trials are going on now. At this very second, on any humming highway, any deadly drumming dieway, two speeding cars collide head on. While some cunning student of chess decides it's best to forfeit a pawn for a night. Somewhere else, a fight. In an angry hand, a razor flashes, Afrikaners guard against others' border clashes, and blood is going to flow somewhere tonight. Somewhere right now, on stage, some musicians are cooking, while ghetto gigolos decide to get a little bit better looking for the fixins, fixing to get into something or the other. Somewhere right now, chastity is not being defended bravely. Somewhere, some kindred soul is bent over some rusted shovel digging gravely now. Somewhere right now, maybe even in here tonight, somebody is high. Maybe a couple of somebodies is high. Somebody else has been eating Aunt Jemima's sweet potato pie, dig in a pool hall now. Some loser is racking, and at some church in Cambridge, some poet keeps on yakking now. Right now, somewhere, some prim, elderly church mom overhears some dirty, dirty joke and smiles. And right now, in these loneliest of times, some kid is crawling for the first time into a record and is hearing the trumpet of a guy named Miles. Right now, everything is going on at this millisecond or at some ancient dawn. What? How? Oh, dear dreamers, there is no other time than now, than right now. Thank you.
Let's keep it going with Regie Gibson. Charles Coe. The Parliament meeting. Professor Grolier. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here tonight.
We have some food available, and of course, we have books for sale.
Thank you, Reggie. Thank you, Charles, Carter, Ogechi. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for those who joined us on Zoom. This has become a really special annual tradition for our family, and it means a lot to us that you came out, that you're helping us keep this tradition going. Also want to acknowledge Mike and James and Mina and all of the interns and everyone at the advisory board that helps keep the Grolier going behind the scenes. We could not do it without you. And I just want to, some of you have probably been hearing from Uchenna Okeja, Professor Uchenna Okeja, the last couple of years if you've attended this event, but The other initiative that my father started before he died was the Menkiti Institute for Comparative Global Studies. And so this is the second year that we're going to be having events in Worcester this weekend, kind of coinciding with this. And so I'm going to have Uchenna just introduce the topic of that symposium that's going to be going on tomorrow on Saturday morning, and some of the amazing minds that have flown in from overseas and across the country to participate in that. And just thank you again. You said you pray that we get through these interesting times or something like that. And I seriously think that it's poetry and gatherings like this that are going to get us through these times. So thank you all. Uchenna?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for this wonderful event. Tomorrow, the 22nd and the 23rd Saturday, we'll be having the second annual summer seminar in Worcester at the Menkiti Institute for Cooperative Global Studies. For this event, we have chosen the topic Community, Politics, and Global Solidarity. In my little village, in my culture, the Igbo culture, there's always that saying that when something terrible happens to the big man, the little or the lonely person weeps, not because they're sharing the direct pain the person is going through, but because they know that when the strongest amongst them is weakened, the community suffers. We see what is happening globally to democracy. The strongest of countries that practice this ideal called democracy are having challenges, and the weakest are looking and they're wondering what is the future of humanity. We will converge in Worcester to think about the sources of new imagination that will guide humanity going forward, looking not just at the strongest, not just at the most experienced countries that have practiced this ideal, but also at countries and communities that have faced the most terrible kinds of conflict, but have found ways to move forward. So we have speakers from South Sudan, a professor at St. John's University in New York. We have speakers also from the University of Colorado and Boulder, and we have people also coming from Yale and across different universities. But this evening, I came here with two of the speakers that will be with us in Worcester, and I would like to just recognize them. I would like to begin with Stephanie Waga, who is the faculty at Wellesley College, having just moved here from the London School of Economics. Also, we have Mitra Grolier, who is on the faculty at Nelson Mandela University in South Africa. So, thank you very much. If you have the time, please try to join us either on Zoom or in person in Worcester. And thanks again to all of you and to the Menkiti family for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. As I said before, there's food over there and books for sale. We hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Get the guy at say.